Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Fundraising Insider. Today we're speaking with Daryl Chan, Head Data Strategist at SG Support. Daryl transforms large data sets into stories that shape actionable fundraising strategies. Thanks for speaking with us, DC.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's get right into it. You've got a communications background. What got you into working with data?
So, coming from a communications background, it was a natural segue to join SG into the communications team back then, which I was leading. And the approach back then, I guess in at least where I came from, it was almost the antithesis to data, because I was a creative guy, and when the client service people came down with a brief, and say, here's the client insight, we'd go like, this client insight does not align with the creative direction, and we throw it out the window and kind of do what we like creatively anyway. Then joining SG, I then realized that there had to be some sort of method to the way that we communicate. We can't just communicate in doing what feels right. There had to be actual evidence backing the communication that was going out.
To donors.
To donors,
Yeah.
not just based on assumptions. And just to give an example of what went on back then, that there used to be this assumption that we've got an attrition spike in month X, therefore we must precede that with a communication in the month before. And the questions in my mind were, have we first established that this attrition spike exists? And does it really solve anything by putting a communication in the month before? Have we established that the problem to this attrition spike is communication?
Right.
If the spike did exist at all. So that kind of got me looking into data, trying to find evidence, and one thing led to another. So today here I am in the data team called Insight.
That's a good story. So going into the aspect of data itself, we hear that data is the new oil, but having data alone is not enough, is it? We have to put it to work. So what does data-driven decision-making mean to you?
It pretty much means exactly what it says on the can. It's making your decisions not based on assumptions, not in a finger in the wind kind of manner. It's looking at evidence and using that evidence to draw a conclusion, which sometimes has to be a fairly brave conclusion. Being human, we tend to sometimes want to do what feels right. It may not be what exactly it is that the data is indicating. It may take some will or some courage to actually make a certain jump.
A counterintuitive decision. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sometimes it's counterintuitive. Sometimes it's just a jump that may take a lot of effort or take us out of a comfort zone, out of the way we're used to operating. But it is what the data indicates that we should do. Therefore, this is the decision that we should make.
And how have you seen the evolution of the use of data to support decision making in the charity space, typically with regular giving, which is what we deal with most of the time?
For sure, charities are asking for more and more data and deeper data. So I think that's a very positive indicator for the way that the industry is moving. In the past, I think our clients used to ask us for some fairly, I guess, top line numbers, or sometimes we'd be asked for a number and we'd give it in the form of a report or something, and a certain decision would be made, which in retrospect when I look at it, did the client ask for the right thing? Because there are times when I guess when just getting into the early stages of transitioning into data-driven decision making, their clients are trying to be data-driven in the way they make decisions, right, but perhaps they've not asked for the right data in order to make the right decision. So part of our process now in our team is when someone asks us for data, we usually ask, what's the outcome that you want? What's the decision that they're trying to make?
Or what the problem is that they're trying to solve?
Yeah, what's the problem that they're trying to solve? And sometimes we realize that there's a mismatch between what is being asked for and what that problem is. We can then try and propose a better solution or a better way, or give the right numbers that you need, which were not what was asked for in the first place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. These insights and trends and learnings that come out of your analysis, these are shared back to clients in the form of schedule reports, Power BI dashboards, and off and on, even with special events. Is that correct?
So yeah, we do reporting in various forms, from the classic static reports in Excel to Power BIs, which are the trend these days. People love Power BI, and it has its place. It still has its limitations, though. So Excel is still very much a thing. There's an important place for it in the work that we do. Let's talk a bit about Datashare, since you already alluded to it. So the Datashare as a product started 4, maybe 5 years ago. It's kind of experimental at first. We thought, what if we kind of got all our clients together from one country and tried to cross-share their data, because typically every client's data is siloed. The client owns their own data, and we're not at liberty to share that information with other people. But we realized there are valuable insights to be learned when we aggregate all the data from one country into one bigger data set. And there are things that charities can learn from each other as well by looking at each other's data and see what they do well, what they're not doing well, compared to others. So we got all our charities from one country into one room, and we aggregated the data and we presented it back to them. In a small way at first, but it's kind of grown over the years into one of SG's flagship products.
And we do them for multiple countries now. I think that first one was a small one for Malaysia, and now we do them across our markets.
Yeah, of course. We do it for more markets now, so more countries, and every country has more clients. So the data sets that we're working with get bigger and bigger. Not only do we do country data shares, so one way of looking at it is taking one country with all your clients in it. The other way is looking at one client, but for all their countries.
Right.
So, for a multinational, we take one charity brand and do that same data share, but across different countries as well, which has a different complexity to it because every country is different. Whereas if you're, taking all your charities from one country, they have more or less the same commonality being in one country. When you start looking at multiple countries, you then get into things like currency conversion. You've got to use a common currency, let's say, and metrics need to be sort of normalized across different countries as well. So it does bring with it different challenges, but it's been, I'd say, a valuable product for SG to establish thought leadership and market leadership position for ourselves.
And where do you see the difference in learnings that come out of the country-centered data shares versus a data share which is one charity but multiple countries? So for that one charity, multiple countries model, what would be the kind of metrics we look at that would make sense across different countries, across different markets?
I guess they look at, in every market, how much are we asking for?
Okay, the average donation and things like that?
For example, every market kind of has different levels of average income and GDP and so on. So are we over asking? Are we under asking? We typically see different donor behaviors in different markets. For example, the attrition rate is naturally different for every market, and this is driven by both donors' financial capacity as well as the banking infrastructure in that country. So you can't compare apple to apple attrition rates for every market, but for charities, I guess they find it valuable to benchmark between their markets. Ultimately, for a charity, I think if you're one charity looking at multiple markets, you're trying to see where's my revenue coming from, which is my strongest revenue stream, how do I support that, which is my weakest revenue stream, how do I build this up, are there roadblocks that I can get past so that this country performs to better potential, for example.
So we're really using the data to support pretty high level strategic decision making and strategic planning.
Yeah, so we typically see the top brass from the charities attend these data share sessions as well. Whereas when you compare it to a country level data share, it's a different dynamic because every client in that room is kind of for themselves, and they're there trying to learn from each other rather than having high level decision making on the other hand.
That's a very interesting point. So staying with this line of thinking on data-driven decision making, let's go into the practicalities a little bit. Give us an example of how a charity would use a data model or use learnings from data analysis to either inform or improve their donor retention program.
So when it comes to donor retention, I'm going to reword this as communication. Retention is very broad. Retention is kind of everything that SG does to help to retain a donor, from processing, like how we process the payment, to like call center work, saving and recovery and all. And in that case, the data tells you I guess where you can find the gains. Some exercises may be, high effort but low gain. If you look at the data and see that the revenue output coming out from this exercise is really very minimal compared to how much effort it took to implement it.
Right.
Should we continue doing this, for example? From a communication perspective, because I guess a lot of charities refer to communication as donor retention, although it's broader than that. My usual advice is that you first want to evaluate your content. From a content perspective, is this content performing or is it not? Is it having the desired effect? Content can often be a double-edged sword. And this is completely unintentional, but it's just the nature of the message and how people react to it. If you're a charity dealing with human rights issues, for example, people sit on two sides of the fence when it comes to human rights, right? It steps into the realm of the political.
Right.
And some people are more conservative, some people are more liberal, and different schools of thought. Therefore, your content can resonate both ways with different groups of people. So you first need to evaluate, is my content having the desired effect on the desired group of people? If your content's working, do more of it. Communicate as much as you can with as many people as you can, and that helps you to amplify and maximize the effect of your communication, right? And we hope that therefore leads to longer term donor retention, a more positive donor experience, and so on. If your content is not resonating as you intend, your best move is really to stop communicating until you figure out your next move. What is the right message to communicate to this group of people that will kind of push them in the direction that I want them to go rather than the other way. And once you have established that, you can then get back into planning, like, I guess, logistical part of your communications plan, which is how much do I communicate, when do I communicate, and how do I communicate? Yeah, and you really look at data to drive this, right? So of the people I'm sending communication A to, how are they performing? Are they dropping off faster than the control group B, who is not receiving this communication, and so on? And how do I benchmark this performance against other charities? We of course not share the data. Like I mentioned, we're not at liberty to share the data unless it's in a data share environment. But we are in a position to consult for our clients and kind of tell them where they stand, in terms of is it good or is it bad, and what's kind of the envelope that you're looking at in those percentages.
And you can always share learnings, good practices that you see from one charity can always be sort of taught to another charity, right? Without sharing the data.
Yeah, we can certainly share best practices or consult our client if they bring an idea and we think that's not the best idea. We generally do that for them.
This has been very insightful, DC. Thanks so much for this, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.